Muzdalifah is this area where everybody knows about what sleeping under the stars, but I would gather because of that there are very specific nuances in terms of what you can and can't do. What's your advice there?
When it comes to Muzdalifah, one needs to acknowledge that there are 7 or 8 pedestrian roads that all merge into one, coming into this very small valley called Muzdalifah. Unlike Mina, where there's a spillover into a neighboring suburb, and Arafah, which is wide and expansive, this is a very constricted space and area. So, how does everyone manage to spend time in Muzdalifah? We know that the ideal is that you should strive to spend the entire night in Muzdalifah and only leave after the observance of Salat al-Fajr. But there is concession then in terms of the elderly, the sick, the frail, and also other people who render very essential support services to leave earlier. So they would spend a few hours in Muzdalifah and then move on. So this facilitates then for, even though it's a small area for many people, to spend time in Muzdalifah. What actually happens in Muzdalifah is of utmost importance. You know, it's human nature that after completing at Arafah with this lengthy dua, where you've asked on behalf of all and sundry, you've fulfilled your responsibility to the best of your ability as a delegate representing a constituency. The moment you leave Arafah, there's this realization in your mind, I forgot someone, I forgot something. And Allah has facilitated for this too. Because Allah mentions in Quran, فَإِذَا أَفَدْتُم مِّنْ عَرَفَاتٍ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ عِنْدَ الْمَشْعَرِ الْحَرَامِ. And when you complete and you train and you flow from Arafah, then remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Mash'ar al-Haram, in Mash'ar al-Haram, in Muzdalifah. So as there is a wukuf, a standing period and a period of observance of supplication in Arafah, there is one in Muzdalifah as well. And that period is normally after the Salat al-Fajr, on the morning of the
So
third
the
day
next
of Hajj,
morning.
the next morning. Hence the encouragement where possible to actually spend the night. So what you've forgotten at Arafah, you have almost a second chance at Muzdalifah.
And yet I don't hear too many people place that much importance on that particular wukuf.
Reason being that a good number of people would undertake Hajj by bus or by some means of conveyance. And with the means of conveyance, remember the walking pedestrian routes, as I spoke about, all 8 of them are actually in the places of Hajj. So you come into Muzdalifah to facilitate for the huge throngs of people, and also to make sure that people have a good quality of air. The transport routes are normally on the outside of this valley, which means that people sometimes don't know whether they actually did pass through Muzdalifah or not. Or if they actually want to be in Muzdalifah, they would need to disembark from the buses and other modes of transport and then actually walk into Muzdalifah. And sometimes, because many of the people have done and undertaken this leg by bus or by road, they're not cognizant of whether they actually are in Muzdalifah. But for the ones who've walked from Arafah, they would tell you about how beautiful an experience it is. What makes it a beautiful experience? The fact that you've stood on Arafah, you've sought forgiveness, you've had this very lengthy, personal, one-on-one, secret, confidential confession session, and now arguably you are in the best spiritual, emotional, mental state that you'll ever be in your life after your birth, because you're freed from all your sins. So there's a sense of being light-hearted and light-headed, and in that Allah asks you to remember Him. There can be no more beautiful experience than remembering Allah with, as we would say, a clean slate.
And is there any other bit of advice that you can give us around the picking up of the stones at that time for the next day's journey to Mina?
Yes, picking up of the stones is a simple and easy procedure, in the sense of, when one thinks about it, if you had to take your fingers and draw lines in a sandbox, you would see that if there were any pebbles, they would immediately show up. So many times people say, but I battled and I struggled to find pebbles. That's the tip that separates those who manage to find more than enough pebbles from those who claim, I never found any pebbles. Simply draw lines in the sand and you'd see that the pebbles would show up.
And they'll suddenly all crop up.
Yes.
Interesting. Is there just to go back in terms of historical significance of Muzdalifah, in terms of the Qurbani part of it? Do we replicate that in terms of picking up the pebbles? What does it mean?
So Muzdalifah didn't exist in the rituals of the pilgrimage pre-Islam. So we know that much of what we have in the Hajj actually came from a pilgrimage that existed in the pagan culture predating Islam. And Muzdalifah is one of those stations that separates the Hajj or the pilgrimage pre-Islam to the Hajj of Islam, based on this ayah of Quran that we've spoken about, where Allah says when you drain from Arafah, you have to pass through this direction because it's en route to Mina. So spend time here in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the significance here is based on Allah differentiating us from previous nations, from previous peoples.
Is GPS a factor in terms of understanding where you are from a location point of view?
Yes, GPS can be used to a limited extent, so it would tell you that you're in a specific area, being the area of Muzdalifah. Many people think that GPS can be used to rejoin you once again with people from your own country or people from your own travel group. That is a little bit sophisticated. Naturally, the authorities are overseeing and administering millions of people, more than 2 million people at a time, and certain information in terms of street names, etc., won't be found on that GPS for security reasons, in a bid to make sure that Hajj can't be sabotaged to that extent.